Hello everybody, no prizes for guessing where I am today. I am at the Shmuseum. The first time, in reality, I have spent the morning with the Shmuseum's owner, Tim, known on the streets as Shmee150, talking cars as we do, with the odd bit of filming in between. And he's very kindly said to me that I can take out more or less anything I like from his collection. Now, there are a lot of cars in here that I would love to have a go with, including this, maybe that. Definitely that at some point, but as Tim hasn't had an awful lot of luck with McLarens lately, and I don't want to add to that, and it's a sunny day, I kind of fancy a convertible of a different kind. Like that. This is an AMG GTR Roadster, and I don't really know anything about it, but I do know a man that does.
This is my 2020 AMG GTR Roadster, one of 750 that they've made of the convertible version. You've got a fabric soft top, like on the AMG GT, the GTS, and the GTC, which is what they launched the Roadster with. Up front, we've got the 4-litre bi-turbo V8, and in fact, it would be remiss of me not to pop this open and have a very quick look at the power plant from a full to back. So the cross-plane crank in here, 585 horsepower, 700 newton meters of torque. You have the one-man, one-engine plaque worn on the very top, obviously giving credit to the person responsible for assembling the engine in the car. You've got a 7-speed dual-clutch gearbox, all of the power going to the rear wheels. For the GTR, of course, they widened the track. The R is the more track-focused version of the car, let's say. We've got Sport Cup 2 tyres as standard on the car. We've got the lightweight forged wheels, in fact, on this particular one. And inside, an upgrade I actually made to it was to find a set of the bucket seats, which I particularly like, from the AMG GTR Coupe, and have them installed here, even with seat heating. So those weren't available from factory, which is a really nice specific option to have. A few technological features, we could say: rear wheel steering, 0 to 62 miles an hour, just over 3 seconds or so, plenty quick enough. Top speed, just over 200 miles an hour. As new, the cars here in the UK had a fixed price, effectively a fixed specification, a little over £180,000. Now on the market, perhaps down £20,000 or £30,000. Obviously, this car is about a year and a half old. It's driven at this point 6,000 miles or so, and shortly a few more. For me, the GTR Roadster was an absolute must. I had the GTR Coupe. I've also previously owned a GTR Pro. I've currently got in my collection the C63 AMG Black Series, the SLS AMG Black Series, and also the GT Black Series. So a big fan of these kind of things. The sporty V8s, as an AMG should be, and particularly the GT platform. I think it really offers a lot of reward while you're driving it, but also a car that's very approachable, loaded with the Mercedes technology, everything that you would hope to have in a car like this in terms of infotainment, safety systems, lighting, etc., mixed with the sound, the feeling, the emotion, the reliability. This car has done some good trips already. I've had it down to Italy, I've had it on the Autobahn, I've had it at VMAX with the roof down, which is quite an experience as well. I've had it at the Nürburgring Nordschleife. I've done everything that a car should do, and I've even just daily driven it around London by speccing it in Hyacinth Red. I think it's a colour that's very elegant, very smart, slightly understated for what it is compared to some of the much brighter cars that I have in the collection, but it suits the shape, the lines, and the style of this really well.
You know something? I wasn't actually really expecting to fall for this car, because my previous experience of the AMG GT and its forebear, the SLS, hasn't exactly been stellar. The first time I experienced one of these cars was actually the GTR Coupe a few years ago at a motor industry event at Millbrook, where I got to drive it around the high-speed bowl. It's not exactly a great way to test the dynamics of a sporty car. All I'm really remembering from that were two things. First off, it's ruddy quick in a straight line. Secondly, was that it was stiff as anything. The second point in particular was also one that I experienced when I drove then a GTS Coupe. I was also very disappointed at just how creaky that car was. This, I've got to say, is really impressing me from a number of different angles. First off, it looks stunning. I'm not actually a big fan of the looks of the Coupe, but the Roadster works really well. It's the sort of weird, just kind of cut off at the back, doesn't do anything shape, just does nothing for me. But here, with that all gone, it looks amazing. I'm less fond of it with the roof up, which is one reason I haven't really even taken any shots of it that way. But roof down, and in this Hyacinth red, it's amazing. Tim does a very good job of speccing his cars. If you want to know a little bit more about that process, it'll probably be mentioned in the other video that I'm filming with him later today. And one thing I don't like about this car is the silly gear selector down here. It's a common thing on many modern Mercs. The A45, I think, was the first one I experienced with it. The gearbox is smooth enough, and in regular comfort mode, which we're in now, the car's pretty decent, drives well enough. It's light steering, throttle is easy, progressive, brakes are friendly. Those, incidentally, I'm surprised, are not carbon ceramics. They're just really big old school steels, but they do the job pretty well. I also have to say, I'm actually a pretty big fan of this interior. The yellow stitching does lift it a little bit, all the carbon everywhere is very nice, and this does feel like an upmarket product. I am in complete agreement with Tim over the seats. These are perfect. They are the only ones I would want. They're buckets, they're comfy. The only thing really I criticise about them is where the seatbelt receptacle goes. It does sort of dig into your side if you don't get it out of the way, but that really is a very minor gripe. It also doesn't seem to creak or rattle anywhere near as much as the last one that I drove, and with the roof up on the motorway, it's quiet, very pleasant, really quite lovely. However, you don't really buy an AMG GTR for lovely. You don't buy it to bimble down the road, as impressive as it may look. You buy it for the way that it goes. So let's get it out of comfort mode. You have many settings: slippery, individual, comfort, sport, sport plus, and race. We're going to go in the individual settings, and Tim's got this car set up exactly as I would. So the engine is in race mode, gear shift is now in manual, the AMG dynamics are in Pro, they've got several settings for that, the dampers are in comfort, and the exhaust is what they call powerful. You'll probably have noticed in the drive-bys, even though it was being piloted enthusiastically, big thanks to Tim for doing that, it doesn't sound all that raucous. I don't have a particular problem with that. I think the volume of it as is perfectly acceptable. But let's just see on one of my favourite sections of British B-Road how well this car fares. Shift paddles are very strange, nice solid metal things that move barely a millimetre but have quite a nice action. Oh, that engine is pokey. That big 4-litre AMG bi-turbo always takes a moment to draw its breath, just goes and then bang, you're down the road. I was always a bit fonder of the 5.5-litre bi-turbo like you found in the old SL63, but this is still a very effective lump. Claimed weight for this car is just below the 1700 kilo mark, which for a big convertible, actually it's not that bad. If you compare it with, say, an old Aston V12 Vantage, it does fairly well. It's actually a lot lighter than the new V12 Vantage Coupe. No criticisms of the pace of the thing. It is fast. Grips quite well too, even though it's got loads of torque low down. Push it in the bends a little bit, doesn't brake wide, doesn't get unpleasant. The view out is also absolutely sensational. Hopefully that camera behind me is capturing just a little bit of that, because it does feel like something really, truly special. And that, to be honest, is actually what I felt was lacking in some of the previous cars that I drove, the GTS in particular. Mostly I think I just got annoyed at how much it was creaking and rattling. The other one, the GTR, I just didn't get the time really to properly enjoy. I was in and out of it in about 5 minutes. Truth be told, the car I actually wanted to drive of Tim's was his DBS, because he bought the exact car I was considering buying not that long ago. Apparently a few people have told him that, but you don't often see DBSs in blue, and they look great. We had also discussed the possibility of me taking the C63 Blackout at some point as well, and if that's something you'd like to see on the channel, please do ask, because he has extremely kindly offered to let me have a go of that one as well. Once you get to the top of the rev range, which isn't all that far, it's just over 6,000 RPM, 7 being the red line, the whole dash lights up to tell you that you should change very shortly. That I appreciate. The steering wheel is quite nice in the hand too. The gear shift itself, when you're on the move, pretty snappy, doesn't have the crack or the bite of, say, a Porsche PDK or the Ferrari dual clutch system, but it works well enough. Certainly a lot better than Merc's early dual clutches. If you happen to think I'm just being nice because Tim's very kindly lent me one of his cars, you would be wrong. It's not perfect. Fun though it may be. The steering is the big problem. There's very little in the way of feel or feedback. It's darty, it turns in, it's agile. This has rear wheel steer and it feels fantastic in that regard. But you've got absolutely no sense whatsoever of how close that chassis really is to its limits. In many other cars, this really wouldn't be a big deal. In an SL, for example, it wouldn't be a big deal. That kind of car, I'm quite happy to just bimble along at 7/10, simply enjoying the wonderful weather. But in a GTR, that's the sort of thing that I really do expect. I require decent steering feel. If you're going to make comparisons with things like a 911 GT3, a Ferrari California, or Portofino, Aston Martin, you need to steer well. The Portofino, in all fairness, isn't really that great to steer, but Aston Martin's previous Vantages all were. You get just a little bit, almost a vibration kind of feeding through, but otherwise, that's just it. I was pretty shocked when Tim told me that this is actually a car that's gone down in value from release. It's a limited edition high-performance car from a prestigious manufacturer. This is exactly the sort of car where I could believe anyone who said, oh yeah, no, they were 200 grand new and now they're 250. Why is that? Well, I'm not really into the Mercedes world, so I can't say I'm all that sure. One theory I've got is that Merc have rather milked this model line to death somewhat, and they've done this with a few others. If there was simply the GT, the GTS, then the GTR, I think this car would carry a lot more prestige. However, there has been the GT, the GTC, which essentially was the facelift of that. There was the GTS also, the GTR, the GTR Pro, and now there's the GTR Black Series. Tim gave me one interesting piece of insight because I thought the Black Series would be totally unusable, horrible, nasty, not a car you want to drive on the road. And he said, oh yes, that's the GTR Pro, because that has manually adjustable dampers, which make it on track an absolute weapon. But on road, it's a weapon of a very different kind. It's simply unpleasant. In the interests of science, I'm now going to turn the dial all the way around to race and see to what extent that ruins this car's road manners. Now, as most of the settings were already fairly aggressive, the gearbox, throttle, all that don't really feel any different. The dampers are what I'm really paying attention to. The steering, regrettably, doesn't feel any different than it did a moment ago. And actually, I appear to have found the only level piece of tarmac around. Oh, yeah, little pothole there, you did feel that. Ah, this'll do it. Yes, that's unpleasant, that. Overall, though, I'm actually quite impressed by this car. I'm beginning to question my own memory of the GTR Coupe. I like this thing quite a bit. Oh! I like the fact it's a little bit quieter than the standard item too. That appeals to me. I can hear it just fine in here. I don't really care for anyone else. They're not paying for it. They don't get to listen to it. Oh wow, the turning circle is really good. Visibility at junctions, little bit sketchy. It has a long old bonnet on it. I also really love some of the little touches you do begin to appreciate when you see this car up close. The detailing on the little side strake over there, beautiful. The fact you've got all these little screens in here for all the many buttons, totally unnecessary, but I love it. The Burmester stereo is allegedly really very good. I can't be bothered to play with it because another thing I don't like, the Merc infotainment. I'm sure it's just me being useless, but this touchpad and everything down here, I'm not even going to go near it. Not going to bother. Other people will do better reviews of that kind of stuff, and I'm sure it's the same as many other Mercs as well. In fact, they're all infuriating, all modern Mercs. I don't like the infotainment system, but I suppose you'd eventually get used to it. brake feel is nice, the pedal is softer and lighter than you might expect. After it takes its breath, there is always power at pretty much all RPM, and I've got a confidence in this car. I can place it, I know it's taking up a lot of the road, but I also know which bit of the road it's taking up. Not entirely, unlike my F12. You do get a sense that if you were on more demanding tarmac, this is actually quite flattering for a British B road, the car would become a little bit upset. You get the sensation that with anything more than the gentlest of lumps and bumps, it does want to skip wide. That is what I felt in the GTR previously. Millbrook evidently a less forgiving surface than I probably thought. Cracks and pops are quite nice, not too many of them. I could get used to this. Ordinarily, when you see me review a car, the moment I hit record is actually the first time I really drive it. Whereas with this, I already spent about 45 minutes behind the wheel getting to my filming location. This is important to note because I've had plenty of time to find things about the car and the driving experience that I don't like. There's very little. Yeah, over that section of road back there, you can feel the suspension, even in its comfort setting, it's still quite firm. On my own home roads, I wonder if this could still be just a little too much. But it isn't the undrivable, crashy, horrible old thing that I was expecting. This really is, in most ways good and bad, a very grown-up Dodge Viper. Anything else you want to know? Boot space is actually okay. The fuel tank is a little bit too small, 65 litres, which just isn't really big enough for continental road trips. Fuel economy on a run isn't horrendous, but you're still only going to be getting about 250 miles between fill-ups, and that's just not great. The coupe gets another 10 litres in the tank, which would be helpful. Reception to the car, apparently, is generally very good. People love it. We had someone tooting at it earlier, although I think that's because he saw the Shmee number plate. He obviously thinks that Tim has now gone for a more floral line of workwear. I have to say, I was genuinely looking forward to the C63 Black, which was the car we had initially planned for me to take out, but with the weather being as nice as it is, it seemed almost criminal not to take this. I'm very glad that I did, because it's turned out to be a rather pleasant surprise. I want to say a huge thank you once again to Tim for allowing me to come down to the Shmuseum, have a look around, do a bit of filming with him and take out one of his cars. He's been super chill and nice to deal with, and if you're sat there going, don't really like that Shmee fellow, not my cup of tea, I would heartily urge you to watch the video. I'm also filming with him as soon as I take this back, because I think there you'll get to see a side of him that I know very well, but I don't think the internet does so much. All then that remains for me to say is a big thanks to you once again for watching. Don't forget to like, comment down below, hit the subscribe button if you haven't already, and I'll see you for the next one. Bye bye.